want to say how does the money multiplier get affected because of number one, an increase in the reserve deposit ratio, and number two, an increase in the proportion of money held in currency. So we'll start with an increase in theta. So effect of increase in theta, which is your reserve deposit ratio. So now we know that the money multiplier is given to us as money multiplier is given to us as 1 by c plus theta 1 minus c. So now as theta, which appears in the denominator, increases, we know the money multiplier will go down. Because when we know the denominator of a fraction becomes bigger, the overall denominator becomes smaller. So this is like just the mathematical part of it. Let's try to understand the economic intuition behind this. Economic intuition. That why does an increase in theta reduce the money multiplier? For this, let's recall that banks contribute to money creation by making loans. As when they make loans, they create new deposits, which are new money. Right, so let's recall that when banks, how do they contribute to the money creation process? They basically make loans. Like when they receive deposits, there's a certain part they keep as reserves, the rest they loan out. And the loans they make in turn create new deposits, which are new money, because we know money can be in the form of currency or deposit. So now what happens is when theta increases, so now when theta increases, where we know theta represents fraction of deposits, a fraction of deposits banks hold as reserves rather than lending out. So when theta increases, what happens is a larger fraction of deposits held as reserves so banks make less loans, thus limiting the money creation process reflected through a smaller multiplier, thus limiting right? So this is the idea. This is the economic intuition behind it. Let's look at the effect of an increase in C now. So part 2 is effect of increase in C, where we know C is what proportion of your money do you hold in the form of currency, because you can either keep your money in the form of currency or deposits. Now we know that the money multiplier is 1 by C plus theta 1 minus C. Now here, when we were looking at the effect of theta, it was very straightforward because theta appeared in one place, but C appears in two places. So we can first combine them into one. So we can first combine them into one to analyze the effect of C. So we'll first combine the two C's into one to make it easy to analyze. So this we can write as, so we can open this up. plus theta minus theta c. And then what you can do is you can write this as 1c minus theta c plus theta. And then if I take this here, so we know okay, the money multiplier simply c. I'll factor out the c now from c minus theta c plus theta. So now c is only appearing in one place. Now we can see from here that as c increases, which appears in the denominator, the overall fraction becomes smaller, so the money multiplier goes down. Because as we mentioned before, when the denominator increases of a fraction, the overall denominator goes down. So this was like looking at the effect of an increase in C. Now let's look at the economic intuition behind it. So let's look at the economic intuition of why an increase in C causes a decrease in the money multiplier. Economic intuition. Now, when C increases, now here we need to keep in mind what C represents. C is fraction of total money demand and D held as currency. COD, because you have an option. You can either keep it in the form of currency or you can keep it in the form of deposits. So when C increases, people keep a greater proportion of their money form of currency rather than deposits. So banks have less deposit. Banks less deposit money to lend out. Thus limiting the money creation process reflected in a smaller multiplier. The money creation process. So this is how the money multiplier is affected through an increase in the reserve deposit ratio, and then we looked at through an increase in the proportion of money held in currency.